While we're waiting for more people to filter in, I will start with some information about RENVU and welcome you all. So hi everyone, welcome to the Solar Inverters Market Series. My name is Erez Dolev and I'm the Managing Director at RENVU. Today we're going to be hearing from Tony Vernetti, Sales Trainer at Enphase, and we will tell us about Enphase Energy System value proposition, advantages of the new IQ8 microinverter series, available system configurations and use cases, key components of the system, solar and battery sizing best practices, and resources that are available for you. We will share also in the chat now a link to the IQ8 and Enphase components webpage on our website, so you can start looking into the documents and pricing. Before we dive in, and while we are waiting for more people, I'll give a little background on RENVU and some of the products and services we offer. RENVU is a solar equipment distributor. The company was founded in 2012 and have fulfillment centers in California, New Jersey, and Texas. We will share now in the chat also a link to our commercial price list, which includes pricing for solar panels, ESS options, and inverters. This file is being updated constantly and can be a great resource for you. So save it and check it out when you need panels or inverters or when you just want to compare pricing. I want to go over one product, which is Bleaky Residential Carport. It is made in Texas, made with galvanized steel with marine grade paint to withstand severe conditions. Easy installation, designed for installers, no heavy equipment needed, and can be installed in few hours by a crew of 2 people. The carport can accommodate 24 60-cell panels or 18 72-cell panels. The array can be sealed with special EPDM gasket, can carry 35 pound per square foot of snow, and can be upgraded up to 65 PSF, and base wind of 130 miles per hour, which can be upgraded to 175 miles per hour. You can purchase this structure standalone, and you can add some accessories to make it even better. There is an authorized installers program that you can join, get special pricing, leads in your area, training and marketing assistance from Bleaky. One last thing is our solar kit guide, which is a design and quote tool on our website. You can just, in a couple of clicks, you can generate yourself a full quote. You can select what type of inverters you want, which panels you want to add. While you're doing it, on the left you will see the bill of material, updated system summary, and pricing. If you're logged in, you will see also pricing on this column. You can select the type of roof and a number of arrays, then number of rows and panels in each row, portrait, landscape. And while you're doing that, everything on the left is being updated based on your selections in real time. And now you can see also pricing are being updated, type of racking you want, color of clamps, the span. In this case, I chose Iron Ridge, so I can select between their 2 options. You get a dimensions layout. Then you're getting to the microinverter page. You can select the manufacturer you want, in this case Enphase. Here you can select what type of energy storage you want to add, and some bill of materials. I'll add 2 EV chargers, and you can add also engineering services here. Full permitting package in this case. And at the end, you're just getting to this page. You can see all the items that were selected for you, and you can ask the proposal to be sent to your email. All right, if you have any questions about these products or about Enphase, feel free to ask in the Q&A section, and we will get to the questions at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. You can also email our sales team at info@renvu.com for more information and pricing. as well. We do have recordings of previous webinars on the RENVU YouTube channel. If you want to take a look at any of our past webinar offerings, this webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link in the follow-up email. All right, it looks like we're about to get started here. I'm going to hand it over to Tony.
Thank you for the introduction, Erez, and thank you everybody for taking some time out of your day to join us today for this training. Just going to switch this over to my screen. All right, Erez, can you confirm that you can see my screen now? This is introducing the new all-in-one Enphase Energy System.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so welcome to today's webinar about the much anticipated IQ8 microinverter for solar and the Enphase Energy System. The IQ8 was fairly recently launched just back in late October, and it's going to be shipping this month. So it should be landing in the RENVU warehouses very soon. We're really excited to have this opportunity to share with you its unique capabilities as a microinverter and how it's going to impact the solar and battery solutions that you offer your customers. Many of you are part of our installer network as well, and you're the ones that work directly with home and business owners. It can't really be overstated how important you are to the success of Enphase. So again, thanks for taking some time today to learn about our new products. Again, my name is Tony Vernetti, and I'm a sales trainer with Enphase Energy. I've been with the company for almost 2 years. I started in March of last year, and I live in Monterey County, California, in the Central Coast region. I've been in the solar industry since 2008, and I've held roles in both residential and commercial solar sales, battery sales, solar thermal sales, and tech support even for a short stint. So the agenda for today, we're going to cover the following topics. Actually, these are already reviewed by Erez, but essentially the value proposition. We're going to go into depth, into detail rather about the IQ8 and the new configurations that are possible with the IQ8. And we're going to cover the key components that are needed for the different configurations that we have now. If you have any questions throughout the session, I encourage you to use the questions interface rather than the chat. If you put your question in the questions interface, that will allow us to follow up with you after the session more easily. If there's some questions that we're not able to get to, or I just don't know the answers to, this way I can get back to you at a later time. All you got to do is click the little triangle in the questions. I'm sorry, in the GoToWebinar tool. Toolbox, and it'll open up the questions interface, and you can put your questions in there. So the learning objectives for today's session. After the session, you should be able to describe the key features of the Enphase Energy System and its benefits, explain the benefits of having control of the entire system from one app, describe the unique benefits of the IQ8 microinverter, list the components that are needed for the 4 system configurations that we'll review, and also explain how Enphase IQ Load Control, or the IQ Load Controller device that we're selling now, can improve the homeowner experience. So let's start with the value proposition. With the Enphase Energy System, homeowners can have an all-in-one battery software, all-in-one solar, battery, and software system engineered to work perfectly together, and the entire system is managed by a single app. Many other systems on the market are comprised of components from different manufacturers that aren't really designed to work together, and they don't effectively communicate with each other. This approach usually results in limitations to the performance of the system and often leads to a poor customer experience as well. The power produced by the solar system with Enphase microinverters can be stored in the battery for use anytime, whether it's for backup power for blackouts, or during peak hours to reduce energy bills, or simply for self-consumption. Our load control feature can automatically manage large electrical loads, which improves the resilience of the system and the customer experience. The intuitive Enphase app allows the owner to easily monitor and control the entire system. They don't have to use multiple apps from different manufacturers to monitor their complete system. With the Enphase app, they'll be able to see historical energy production by the solar system, the charge status of their batteries, and they can easily customize the system settings for their individual preferences. The IQ8 is our smartest and most responsive microinverter yet. The key difference between the IQ8 and earlier generations is its ability to provide backup power to a home during a grid outage, even with a battery. Now, how is this possible? The IQ8 has an advanced microchip called an ASIC, which stands for Application-Specific Integrated Circuit. That just means that it's specifically designed for its function as a grid-agnostic or grid-forming microinverter. It's actually 1,000 times faster than the previous generation with the IQ7. This high speed allows it to adjust extremely quickly to changes in the electrical loads or power demand of the home, ensuring stability of the microgrid. Other inverter companies have attempted this in the past, but they could only offer a very limited amount of power to a single outlet. The IQ8 and the Enphase Energy System allows automatic and instant backup power for the home's essential loads with the full available power of the solar array. The fast response time also means that a relatively large solar system can be connected to our smallest 3.3 kilowatt-hour battery, and this is not going to have any negative impact on the stability or the performance of the microgrid. Naturally, you also have all the same benefits of distributed architecture you're accustomed to with Enphase, such as higher energy yield, minimized impact of shade, and no single point of failure, which you would have with a string inverter. To simplify the options available with the Enphase Energy System, we have 4 configurations. The first is solar only, which is a conventional grid-tied or grid interactive solar system which will save a homeowner money, run the home on clean energy, and can be managed by the Enphase app. It's important to point out that this is not the configuration that offers backup power. This is conventional grid-tied or grid interactive solar. The next option is the truly innovative configuration we call sunlight backup. This configuration can provide backup power to the home's essential loads if the sun is shining on the solar array. When offering this solution to homeowners, it's critically important to communicate not only the benefits, but also the limitations due to the natural variability of the power output, because it's, again, reliant on the sunshine or the irradiance. Next, we have the Home Essentials backup option, where we integrate a battery, which will now offer emergency backup power to the essential loads of a home 24 hours a day. Battery sizes start at 3.3 kilowatt hours, and again, there is no limit to the size. There is, more flexibility, I should say, to the size of a solar system that can be coupled with a small battery. Lastly, we have the full energy independence configuration, which would be designed to provide backup power to all the loads of the home, otherwise called whole home backup. The solar array and the battery size will be customized with the help of Enphase's free system planner to meet the specific energy and power needs of the home. I'm going to cover how each of these configurations works in more detail later in this session. Before we move on to more detail about the configurations, we need to talk about some changes that we've made to our names. So we've received quite a bit of feedback from our customers over the past couple of years, especially since our battery storage system has come out. The feedback was that our naming scheme was kind of complicated, and some of the names were simply just hard to remember because they were unique words. We really listened to your input and took it to heart, and we're excited to roll out a more simplified approach where we together can emphasize the Enphase brand. Since I'll be using the new product names in this session, I'll review them now so you know what I'm talking about throughout the session. Our battery storage system has been called both Ensemble and Enphase Storage. With the new feature of sunlight backup with the IQ8, we've changed this name to the Enphase Energy System. This name encompasses all possible configurations with or without batteries. The Encharge storage system has been renamed the IQ Battery. The Npower, which is the Smart Disconnect Switch, or MID of the system, has been renamed the IQ System Controller. With the introduction of the IQ8, we have a new smart switch, which we've simply named the IQ System Controller 2. The IQ Envoy, which is the communication device of the system, which collects information from all the components and sends it to the Enphase cloud, that's been renamed the IQ Gateway. My Enlighten, or the Enlighten app, which is the end user monitoring system of Enphase, has been renamed the Enphase app. And Enlighten Manager, which is the professional version of Enlighten used by installers and other professionals, is now called the Enphase Installer Platform. So we know that these are a lot of new names all at once, but we hope that now with the simplified and descriptive names that we're using, it's going to be easier for you to remember these names and have conversations with your customers. So now we're going to go through each of the configurations more in depth. So first we have the solar-only configuration. So the IQ8 series can function just like previous generations for a conventional grid-tied solar application when backup power isn't needed. A grid-tied system will feed power to the home, reducing energy consumption from the utility. And then whenever the system is producing more power than the home requires, that excess is fed back to the utility. Many customers have agreements with their utility called net metering or net energy metering agreements that will earn them substantial credit for this excess power. In summary, the solar-only configuration will save the owner money while powering their home with clean energy. Many new solar customers mistakenly believe that their new solar power generation plant on their roof will power their home during an outage. And they're often extremely disappointed when they find out that a conventional solar system is designed to turn off automatically during an outage. The sunlight backup configuration is Enphase's solution to this problem. The revolutionary feature of the IQ8 microinverter is that it can provide backup power to a home while the sun is shining, and it can even do this without a battery. With the addition of the Enphase IQ System Controller 2, the sunlight backup system can disconnect instantly from the grid during a power outage, and the solar system with the IQ8 microinverter will power the home. Since the sun is the power source and is naturally highly variable, a sunlight backup system needs to be designed with this variability of power output in mind. Sorry, I keep actually accidentally going to the next slide. So because of the variability and how that can impact the kind of performance of the system, we require the installation of an essential loads panel with a recommended maximum of 4 120-volt circuits. During an outage, only the essential loads panel will be powered by the sunlight backup system. We also require the installation of 2 IQ load controllers. This is a new product I'll go into more detail about later, but each load controller can control the power supply to 2 circuits. So by installing 2, you can control power to all 4 circuits that are in the essential loads panel. There will be a new load control setting available for the essential loads, which is designed to improve the stability of the microgrid and the homeowner experience with the sunlight backup system. Let's review a simple single-line diagram which illustrates how the system works. When the utility grid fails, the IQ system controller disconnects from the grid. If it is sunny, the microgrid is instantly formed by the IQ8 microinverters. The essential loads panel will have continuous power from the microgrid, and the circuits in the main panel will no longer have power. If the power outage occurs at night, the IQ8s will wake up when the sunshine hits the solar panels in the morning, and the microgrid will form. Then the system will power the essential loads. The load control feature will manage the loads early in the morning and late in the afternoon when the available solar power is low, so the customer doesn't experience sort of a herky-jerky on-off experience. The electrical loads which we recommend for the essential loads panel are the refrigerator, some lights and fans, internet equipment if needed, and a miscellaneous 120-volt outlet for charging mobile devices or powering other small electronics. We don't recommend using this miscellaneous outlet for high-power devices like space heaters or hair dryers, as they could easily overwhelm a sunlight backup system. Large electrical appliances like air conditioners and pumps, those should stay in the main panel and they would not have power during an outage. You're probably wondering, how is this sunlight backup system going to work in the real world? Well, let's take a look at an average size solar system with about a 10 kilowatt DC rating and 8 kilowatt AC rating. The amount of available power depends on the irradiance or intensity of the sunshine. On a sunny day with clear skies, the available power at sunrise will be low, and it'll gradually increase until midday, and then gradually decline until the sun sets. There will be instances when the power demand of the home exceeds the available power of the solar array. At these moments, the microgrid will collapse and the power will go out. What if a power outage occurs at night? Soon after sunrise, the IQ8s will form the microgrid and start converting power. However, it's likely to be too little at first to support any significant loads. Therefore, load control will delay powering the essential loads until 9 a.m. This allows irradiance and therefore the potential solar power to increase and improve the chance that the system will successfully power the home's essential loads. The load control algorithm will allow the essential loads to turn on one at a time with a gap between them. These gaps between the loads powering on allows the system to identify if there are any problem loads, and then if there is a load that's causing repeated collapse of the microgrid after 5 failures, it will stop attempting to power that load for the rest of the day. Then, in order to prevent the homeowner from experiencing that kind of on-off power cycling at the end of the day, the load control algorithm will disconnect the essential loads at 4 p.m. A key difference between a sunlight backup system and one with batteries is that it doesn't have the ability to provide an extra burst of power. We know this as peak power with battery systems. It can't do that to help start appliances that have a starting surge like air conditioners and pumps. If an air conditioner were to turn on, the large demand spike would most likely cause an instant collapse of the microgrid. Now, it's possible that a large solar system and a very attentive homeowner who's paying attention to the sky, the clouds, and all of their appliances, their power demand, they could potentially operate a large appliance with a sunlight backup system. But for most situations, for the best experience for the homeowner who's not, in most cases, going to be super savvy and paying attention every minute of the day, it's best to just back up small 120-volt loads like the refrigerator, phone chargers, and fans. Our documentation states that for an optimal customer experience, Enphase recommends that the power of all essential loads should be no more than 30% of the rated AC power of the solar system. So in this example with an 8 kilowatt AC system, the total load should be no more than 2.4 kilowatts. So somebody asked a question, what about a cloud? So that's a good question. I do get to that on the next slide. Before that, I wanted to talk about a very common misconception out there that inverters are going to deliver their full rated power, meaning their power rating on their spec sheet, whenever the sun shines. But this isn't the case in the real world. The actual power output of a solar inverter is relative to the irradiance or the intensity of the sunshine, as well as the specs of the solar module itself. Irradiance is naturally lower in the winter than the summer. A solar inverter system with a rated power of 8 kilowatts may only reach a high of 5 or 6 kilowatts in the winter, depending on the latitude and orientation of the modules. Winter days are also shorter than summer, so the window during which the system can potentially power the home is going to be smaller. Now, what about clouds? On a partly cloudy day, the available power of the solar array is going to fluctuate a lot as clouds periodically block the sun. If the home's power demand ever exceeds the power of the solar system, the microgrid will collapse and power will turn off. After a few seconds have passed, the system will attempt to form the microgrid again. If the available power can handle the demand at that moment, then it will successfully start up. But if the demand still exceeds the available solar power, it will fail again. Repeated attempts will be made over increasing time intervals to allow the solar system's power to hopefully increase if the clouds move out of the way of the sun, and hopefully the homeowner will be aware of what's happening and will reduce their power demand by turning off loads as well. When discussing sunlight backup systems with homeowners, it's really important to explain how the system may operate given their specific emergency power needs, their essential loads, as well as the climate where they live. A sunlight backup system will operate more reliably in Southern California, which has a high percentage of clear sunny days, versus the Pacific Northwest, which has more overcast and partly cloudy days. Let's move on to the next option, which is the Home Essentials backup option, which includes one or more IQ batteries. including batteries, is now going to extend backup power from daytime only to 24 hours a day. So for those that require reliable backup power around the clock, batteries are a must-have. Battery options start at 3.3 kilowatt hours with our system, but a typical system is going to have 10 to 20 kilowatt hours for an optimal homeowner experience. An essential loads panel and IQ load controller are highly recommended to limit the number of loads backed up by a relatively small battery, and again, to shed large loads which could potentially overload the battery or drain it quickly. Now that we're introducing a battery into the configuration, let's review one of the key benefits of the new IQ8. Since the IQ8 can respond extremely quickly to changes in power demand to keep the microgrid stable, the strict 1.5:1 ratio of solar AC power to battery AC power with previous generations no longer applies with the IQ8. That means a relatively large solar system can be paired even with just a single IQ battery 3. If you are installing just one IQ battery 3, there is another limit to be aware of, which is quite high relative to the previous, and that is a maximum of 48 IQ8 series microinverters. So it doesn't matter which model, it could be the IQ8 or 8 Plus or any of the others, but a maximum of 48 can be installed with just a single IQ battery 3. Now, if more than one IQ battery 3 is being installed, which is going to be the case most of the time, I imagine, the limiting factor then at that point is the 80 amp breaker in the IQ system controller, which means that up to 64 amps of continuous current can feed from the IQ combiner solar circuits. So that would be 64 IQ8s, 52 IQ8 pluses, 44 IQ8Ms or IQ8As, or 40 of our highest power IQ8Hs. It's important to keep in mind that if you are retrofitting an existing solar system with IQ7s or earlier, you still have to abide by the 1.5:1 solar to battery AC power ratio. The option to add a small battery to a relatively large solar system is pretty unique among options on the market. Typically, manufacturers limit the power of the solar system to be about 50% above the battery to ensure that the solar system doesn't essentially overwhelm and cause a collapse of the microgrid. In other words, with other systems, if you've got a big solar array, then you're going to have a big battery too. Homeowners often feel like they're forced into buying a much larger battery than they really need. With Enphase, the homeowner gets to choose the battery size based on their backup power needs and not necessarily on the size of the solar system. Even if the homeowner chooses just a single IQ battery 3, they're now going to have backup power for their essential items 24 hours a day. And during daylight hours, the solar system's power adds to the battery, allowing the owner to potentially run some higher power devices for a limited period during the day. Our last configuration is full energy independence. If reliable and robust backup power for the entire home is desired, then this is the configuration to select. The solar and battery system will be the solar and battery system will be sized to meet 100% of the home's electricity needs, with up to 4 IQ battery 10s and a total of 40 kilowatt hours of energy capacity. It's important to set realistic expectations with your customers when it comes to battery performance to ensure that they have a positive experience. Both energy and power increase with larger IQ battery systems. 2 IQ battery 10s will have double the energy capacity, power, and peak power compared to 1. While the Enphase IQ batteries start at just 3.3 kilowatt hours, this size is not going to be sufficient for most homeowners. This small battery size should only be used in conjunction with an essential load subpanel and just a few small loads, as well as Enphase load control to improve system resilience. 1 IQ battery 10 is a good starting point for most partial home backup scenarios. An IQ battery 10 can power a standard refrigerator, small kitchen appliances, like your microwave, your garage door. Those are, these kinds of items are usually considered essential by most homeowners. And you can easily add, more IQ battery 3s or 10s to this system with, the initial design or at a later date with our modular design system. For whole home backup, or if any large electrical appliances require backup power, at least 2 IQ battery 10s should be installed. A large electrical appliance is one that connects to a 30 to 40 amp double pole circuit breaker, or potentially larger than that. Typical examples are air conditioners, pumps, and large kitchen appliances like cooktops and ovens. Now, if more than one large electrical appliance must operate concurrently, then 3 or 4 IQ battery 10s should be installed. We highly recommend using the Enphase System Planner, and here's a link on the upper left-hand side here. Use this system planner or system estimator, as it was formerly called, when sizing a battery system to ensure it's going to perform as expected. And hopefully you'll have a lot of happy customers and high quality referrals from them. So let's do a quick learning check. True or false? Enphase recommends a maximum power ratio of 1.5 to 1 solar AC power to battery AC power when using the IQ8 microinverter. So the answer here is false. The previous 1.5 to 1 ratio with earlier generations doesn't apply with the IQ8. With the sunlight backup configuration, what occurs when the power demands, let me rephrase that so it sounds right. With a sunlight backup system, what occurs when the power demand exceeds the available solar system power? The microgrid will collapse and the power will go out. True or false? When disconnected from the utility, the available solar power of an Enphase Energy System is going to be consistent during daylight hours. And the answer here is false. The available solar power varies with irradiance. And what is the minimum recommended IQ battery 10 quantity or storage capacity for whole home backup? Our recommendation is 2 IQ battery 10s or 20 kilowatt hours of storage. So now let's review the key components of the Enphase Energy System and their roles. And hopefully this will answer many of the questions that were typed in so far. There are 5 key components to an Enphase Energy System: IQ8 microinverters, IQ Combiner 4 or 4C, IQ System Controller 2, IQ batteries, and IQ Load Controller. The IQ8 is available in 5 models, covering a wide range of power. The IQ8 and 8 Plus have similar power ratings to their IQ7 counterparts. This will make it easy for your designers to change plans from the IQ7 to the IQ8 if it's desired. The same number of IQ8s or 8 Pluses can be installed per branch circuit as the IQ7 or 7 Plus. We then have the IQ8M, which is a new power class, IQ8A and IQ8H with progressively higher power ratings. The IQ8H is our most powerful model with a power rating of 384 VA, volt amps. And it can be paired with solar modules up to around 530 watts in most climates with little to no losses to inverter saturation. The IQ battery is our battery storage system, which comes in 2 energy capacities as well as a new alternative form factor. The IQ battery 3 has a capacity of 3.3 kilowatt hours, and the 10 has a capacity of 10 kilowatt hours. The Enphase Energy System is an AC coupled system, meaning that there's DC to AC conversion both at the solar array and the battery system, and all AC power sources and electrical panels are connected to the IQ system controller. Each IQ battery has multiple integrated IQ8 microinverters. This provides redundancy and improves the reliability of the system compared to other systems that have a single inverter. They're also field serviceable, so in the off chance that there is a single a failure of one microinverter, you can easily replace that one microinverter with a new one. You don't have to take down the whole battery and ship it back to Enphase. The battery chemistry we use is lithium iron phosphate, or LFP for short. This is a different type of lithium ion chemistry that's used by most manufacturers of home battery systems. It's a much safer and more stable chemistry. Because it's a much inherently safer chemistry, IQ battery units have a passive cooling system, no moving parts like pumps and fans. No moving parts means fewer fail points compared to systems that have cooling, like pumps, fans, and liquid coolant systems. They have a NEMA 3R enclosure rating, which means that they can be installed indoors or outdoors. Typically, they're installed inside a garage or on the wall of a home which is not exposed to direct sunlight. You may notice that the IQ8 Battery 10 looks like 3 of the IQ Battery 3s bolted together, and that's exactly what it is. The IQ Battery 10 is 3 of the 3s with a single cover over all 3. That makes it a lot easier for you as the installer to actually install the system, because a 2-person crew can easily handle a large battery system. You don't have to have equipment or 3+ people to manage a 300-pound battery. It's a modular and expandable system because of the fact that it comes in these 2 different sizes, and it's pretty easy to bolt on additional batteries. The warranty is for either 10 years or 4,000 full cycles, whichever comes first, with a minimum of 70% capacity retention. We offer an optional 5-year extension to the warranty, the standard 10-year warranty for a small additional fee if that's desired. This can be helpful if you'd like to finance only the battery for longer than 10 years. If you purchase that 5-year warranty, then you can finance with most major financiers for 15 years and get a much lower monthly payment for your customer. IQ batteries are now available in a different form factor. The names are IQ Battery 3T and 10T. These units are thinner or shallower than the standard IQ batteries, but they are also wider. These might be more desirable in small garages where space is a concern, or exterior wall installations in narrow walkways. They are a little bit lighter as well. They can be installed with the original IQ batteries in the same system. However, for aesthetic reasons, it would be best to use the same type of IQ battery if they're going to be installed side by side, right next to each other. There are only very minor differences in the method of installation. The energy and power capacities are the same as the standard IQ battery, and they also have integrated IQ8 microinverters, and both the warranty and price are the same. The Enphase IQ System controller is the hub to which all power sources and electrical panels connect. Its primary function is to disconnect the home from the utility grid in the event of a grid outage, so it's a required component for any backup power configuration. The IQ System Controller 2, specifically the 2, must be used whenever installing IQ8s on the solar array. The original IQ controller can't be used with IQ8s because it doesn't have the required hardware for rapid shutdown requirements. That said, the IQ System Controller 2 is backward compatible with IQ7 and earlier microinverters. Both the original and the new System IQ System Controller 2 can integrate with home standby generators, which can operate in parallel with solar and battery. It supports both 120-volt and 240-volt loads. Also has an outdoor enclosure rating in NEMA 3R. And it can support up to 4 IQ Battery 10s at a maximum. So that would be a total of 40 kilowatt hours of capacity and a little over 15 kilowatts of continuous power. The IQ Combiner 4 and 4C houses the breakers for the solar system branch circuits. Up to 4 20-amp circuit breakers can be installed, so up to 64 amps of continuous current from the microinverters. The number of IQ8 series microinverters you can connect is going to depend on which specific model is being installed. The Combiner 4 or 4C must be used with IQ8 solar systems in backup power configurations. And the reason there is that you can install hold-down breakers for all 4 breaker locations. Since the IQ8 is a grid-forming microinverter and could potentially still energize circuits during a power outage, or during, if the breaker is turned off, it has to have hold-down breakers. It also houses the IQ Gateway, which sends information to the cloud for monitoring and control. A communications kit must also be installed in the combiner for backup power configurations. It enables wireless communication between the components in the system. And lastly, the IQ combiner also houses the cell modem. Now, a cell modem is required for commissioning all backup power configurations, even just sunlight backup. It serves as a backup internet connection in case the home's network loses power during an outage. The IQ Combiner 4C comes with the cell modem pre-installed, which is compatible with a Sprint and/or T-Mobile cell network. Sprint purchased T-Mobile, so it is compatible with that network. The standard IQ Combiner 4 without the C at the end doesn't include the cell modem. If you know that Sprint cell service isn't going to work well at a specific location, then we do have options. You can actually purchase an AT&T cell modem or a Verizon cell modem separately. From Enphase, but separate from the combiner, and then install that into a standard combiner model. Here's a simple table regarding compatibility for you to reference. The IQ8 can only be installed with the new IQ Combiner 4 or 4C and IQ System Controller 2. If it's installed with earlier versions, it won't be code compliant. The IQ6 and IQ7 is compatible with both the new versions and old versions. If you want to keep things simple, you can always order just the new versions, and they can be used for both new installations with IQ8 or retrofitting existing systems. The Enphase Energy System is compatible with IQ8, the IQ7 and IQ6 family, and the M215 and M250 family. It's not compatible with these older models, S280, S230, or M190s. In an Enphase Energy System microgrid, all microinverters on the solar array must be from the same family. Now, this is an important note to take care because when this product, when the IQ8 was being developed over the past couple years, the original plan, I think, or dream of the engineers would be able to add IQ8s to an existing IQ7 system, and the IQ8s could form the grid, and that would all just work perfectly and happily together. Unfortunately, that is not the case with how the system operates. So again, to be real clear, we have the three families of microinverters that can be together highlighted here. So IQ8s can be in the microgrid, but only IQ8s. IQ7s and IQ6s can exist in the same microgrid, and 215s and 250s can also be in the same microgrid. But these families cannot be mixed together in a microgrid. Okay, let's talk about the IQ load controller. So this is a kitted solution for load control, which contains the contactors and power supply needed to make the load control feature work. This is designed to make it a lot easier for you installers to put this feature in instead of trying to build it from individually sourced components. We know that this has been a hassle for those of you that have installed load control. With load control, a homeowner can make sure specific large loads, which could potentially overload the microgrid, will get turned off immediately when the utility grid fails and there's a blackout. Power can be restored manually with the Enphase app. The behavior can also be customized for each load. For example, a load can be set to turn on or off depending on the battery's state of charge. This prevents large loads from completely draining a battery. Loads can also be set to only have power if an integrated generator is running in parallel. Enphase requires the use of load control for the sunlight backup configuration. As I mentioned earlier, a new load control setting for essential loads will power on the loads one at a time, which the idea here is to reduce the chance of a microgrid collapse, and just improve the homeowner experience overall. Each load controller can control power to two zones. A zone can be either a 240 volt circuit or two 120 volt circuits. Two IQ load controllers can be installed per system for a total of 4 zones. For most sunlight backup systems, 2 load controllers should be included to control all 4 zones. But if the design only calls for two essential loads or zones, then just a single IQ load controller could be used. And lastly, it can also be used for solar circuit shedding for IQ7 systems with batteries. The hardware in the load controller is the same whether you're doing load control or solar circuit shedding. So another quick learning check. True or false, IQ8 solar microinverters can be added to an existing IQ7 solar system for a sunlight backup configuration. The answer is false. All solar microinverters in a microgrid must be from one family. Which system components are required in addition to the IQ8 for a sunlight backup configuration? IQ System Controller 2, IQ Combiner 4 or 4C, 2 IQ load controllers, and an essential loads panel. True or false? The highest peak power of IQ8 series microinverters is the same as the IQ7 series. False. The IQ8H has a peak power of 384 VA, which is 5% higher than the IQ7A's 366 VA. What is the primary job of the Enphase IQ Gateway, formerly called the Envoy? It is monitoring and system control. So we had several comments about generator integration. If you've been following this, you'll know that we did plan on releasing this feature some time ago. Because of the complexity of making the feature work with a wide variety of generators and allowing the solar to operate in parallel, it has taken longer than expected. This feature is supposed to be released this month. When we do the Q&A at the end, I'll do my best to try to get an answer from our product team about exactly when it's going to be released, but it is going to be very soon. Since it is coming out soon, I'm just going to review basically how it works again for those of you that are not familiar with it. So first, I'd like to talk about how typical systems, non-Enphase systems work. Typical configurations use an external automatic transfer switch, and this allows either the solar and battery system or the generator to power the home, but they can't operate together at the same time. When the battery gets to a low state of charge, it'll switch the home's power source over to the generator, and then the solar and battery system will be off. And in some configurations from major manufacturers, you don't actually have the ability to go back to solar power the next day when the sun comes out. You're stuck using the generator until the utility grid comes back up. Enphase generator integration eliminates the transfer switch. The generator is tied directly into the IQ system controller. During a grid outage, the generator, battery, and solar can all operate simultaneously. With all three power sources operating together during a grid outage, the home has the combined power to start and run large electrical loads. For example, a homeowner could run their AC or electric dryer only during the day when all three power sources are operating, and then conserve energy at night when running only off the battery. A generator can also be integrated into a sunlight backup system which doesn't have a battery. This could be an attractive option for homeowners who already own a generator and they would like the ability to run their new solar system at the same time as their generator to have extra power during the day and, of course, reduce the fuel consumption of their generator by perhaps leaving their generator off during the day when it's very sunny. And the generator can even be used to charge the batteries. So this is a nice feature for homeowners who require backup power at times when the solar system isn't producing much. For example, if there are storm clouds or hazy skies from wildfires. The generator can be used to charge the batteries during the day, and then the home can run silently off the battery system at night. So in a nutshell, when a generator is combined with solar and battery storage in this integrated way, the customer is going to have a very robust solution capable of powering a home through extended power outages with or without consistent sunshine. It's important to note that if the generator is integrated with a system that has the older M215 or M250 microinverters, then the solar and generator can't operate together. The battery and generator can, but the solar system is going to have to be turned off with the load control feature when the generator is running. One last learning check, and then we'll move on to the Q&A. So true or false, the IQ load controller improves the resiliency of the microgrid by turning down air conditioner thermostats? The answer is false. So power is disconnected to pre-configured loads by the IQ system controller. It doesn't use the thermostat. With typical non-Enphase generator configurations with solar and batteries, what occurs when the battery state of charge gets critically low? A transfer switch transfers power from the solar and battery system over to the generator, and solar and battery are then turned off. True or false? The Enphase generator integration with IQ micros allows the generator to operate in parallel with solar and battery, making the combined power of all three sources available. Answer here is true. Okay, a couple resources that are in the PDF. And actually, while I'm thinking of it, I do want to draw your attention to the handout section of the GoToWebinar interface. I've put a couple of PDFs in there. One of them is a PDF of today's training session. And the other one is a document called IQ Use Cases, which has some example single-line diagrams for the 4 different configurations, as well as a really complete parts list, which will help you figure out exactly which are the required components for the different configurations. The Enphase System Planner is a free tool on our website where you can go in and enter information about the customer's energy consumption and their specific loads that they would like to have backed up. And you can actually go in and set the actual, the wattage of individual components and the number of hours per day they need to run. And it'll automatically generate a system size for you. And there's a link here to a tutorial video which kind of goes over how to use the system planner effectively. Now we do have a demo of the Enphase app, which many people don't know about. So if you are doing more face-to-face meetings these days and you'd like to show a homeowner what the app looks like, or even have them look at it themselves on their own phone, all you got to do is install the Enphase app or the Enlighten app on their Apple phone or Android phone, open up the app and click on Experience the app right here. You don't actually have to log in to see a demo, and you can select from different systems inside the demo if you want to view one that has only solar or one that has solar and storage. Some additional training opportunities we have. All of our on-demand webinars and live webinars can be found here at this link, enphase.com/events. And we do have certification courses available for these 3 different categories of sales, installation, and design. So if you'd like a deeper dive into energy storage sales, for example, you can get certified. It's about a 3-hour course in total. And it's a nice little thing to put in your email signature to let customers know that you've actually taken some gotten some education from a manufacturer on how to install systems or design systems. Available now on our website are data sheets and quick install guides for all the products we went over today. And for those of you that have an Enlighten ID, I encourage you to check out this link here. It's we call it the Enphase Library. A lot of really useful sales enablement collateral like comparison sheets to other manufacturers, nice, really beautiful presentations you can use to to do presentations to your customers, graphics for marketing. Lots of great resources there, so please check those out. Volume, I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but volume shipments of all the products we talked about today are beginning this month. So if they haven't actually already landed in RENVU warehouses, that's going to be happening very soon. All right, well, I was kind of keeping my left eye on the questions as they came in. A lot of really great questions came in. So I'm going to do my best to kind of go through these. And Peyton and Erez, if there are some that some of these questions that are related to, that are things that you guys would be more apt to answer than I, then I'll kind of send those over to you or ask you to respond to them. Okay, so the first question that came in is, please cover how rapid shutdown requirements are handled with IQ8 configuration with and without the IQ System Controller 2 on the roof for PV only, and IQ8s paired with IQ System Controller 2 for sunlight backup model. Okay, so first of all, if the IQ8 is installed as a solar-only configuration, so not for backup power, no rapid shutdown is needed. The IQ8 is only going to operate as in grid forming or grid, multi-mode if it's commissioned with the IQ System Controller 2. If you install only IQ8s and nothing else, then they're going to operate just like IQ7s essentially. So you don't have to have a rapid shutdown initiator. Turning off the solar system disconnect is sufficient for rapid shutdown. Now, for any system that has the IQ System Controller 2, whether it's sunlight backup or configuration with batteries, There's a separate initiator that we sell called the Rapid Shutdown Initiator that connects into the IQ System Controller 2. And again, just to kind of reiterate, that's needed because when the IQ8 is a grid-forming microinverter, you could potentially turn the breaker off and the lines would still be energized because it's grid forming. So its job is to form a microgrid and to provide power even if disconnected from the grid. So for that reason, we have a separate device that connects to the controller 2. It opens up a relay, which will disconnect the IQ combiner, and it will also initiate rapid shutdown of the IQ8s. Next question, AC coupling, owner system, no internet control, Ethernet communication option between Envoy battery and MID. Okay, so I think what you're saying is if there's, the AC coupling at the beginning kind of threw me off, but if the internet fails, the home network fails, and there's no cell service, we are actually coming out with an option for a homeowner to be able to connect directly with the equipment without using the internet. I don't honestly have much information about that right now. I believe it's still in development. But I will try to get that information for you, Anton, and send it to you. Then your last question is battery shedding for smaller generators. I think I'd need a little bit more information on what you mean by that. I will include the generator tech brief in the handout section here as well, which goes into great detail about integrating generators. The next question is the solar-only configuration, in the solar-only configuration, it looked like a controller was needed. Is this true? Or can you design a system with IQ8 microinverters that would have the same components as an IQ7 system? So you are correct. And I think I went over this pretty thoroughly with one of the earlier questions. So solar-only can be done with the IQ8s. They basically will work like an IQ7. You don't need a system controller if you're doing solar only with no backup capability. Okay, next question. How does the system turn on one load at a time in a sunlight backup system? So this is done with the IQ system, IQ load controller. Each load controller can control 2 zones. That could be one 240 volt circuit or 2 120 volt circuits. So basically, if you have 2 load controllers installed, you could control 4 individual zones. And essentially, when the sun comes up, the system starts producing power. Then at 9 o'clock, the load control software is going to just turn on one load at a time. I believe they're going to be about 10 to 15 seconds apart, so that you don't have a large jump in demand from trying to power on all 4 at the same time. Okay, so question, what's the IQ8M inverter versus the IQ8A? The IQ8A is very similar to the IQ7A. The IQ8M is a new power class that's sort of between the IQ7A. Pull up the slide here. Between the plus and the A. So here with the IQ8 Plus, we're 300 VA, IQ8M is 330 VA peak power, and IQ8A is 366 VA. Okay, next question here is, I know that there is an existing tool on the site for determining which inverter to use based on your module. I assume there's an updated one for the IQ8s. Yes, you're talking about the module compatibility calculator. Yes, there is a new version of that. It has a different URL than the original version. So I will respond to you by email, Alan, with the link to the new version that has the IQ8s. Okay, next question is the 4 IQ10 batteries the max per IQ controller 2? So yes, that is the maximum that can be connected to an IQ controller 2. Now, if you have a large electric panel, say a 400 amp or 800 amp split bus, you could potentially install 2 IQ system controllers 2 let me say that again, 2 IQ system controller 2s, one on each side of that bus, or one on for each one of those panels, and have 2 independent systems. But those pretty much only very large homes have that kind of electrical panel. And it's clear if you do a system like that, you want to be clear with your customer that they operate independently. So if one side, all of the batteries of one side get drained, then all the loads that are connected to those batteries will not have power until they're recharged. Or the sun comes up the next day and the solar system powers it up. Another great question from Alan, is there an updated tech brief for calculating voltage rise with the IQ8s? I'm sure that there is. That's something I'll look up for you and send over to you. Question from Danny. Is there some formula for degradation based on altitude? No, I don't know of a formula. We have the recommended temperature range for the batteries on the spec sheet in the warranty. If the batteries are in a higher temperature or lower temperature for long periods of time than that range, then they will derate, meaning the speed at which they can charge or discharge will be impacted. But I don't have any kind of formula for that for you. Next question, can 6 Encharge 10s be installed on a home using 2 IQ System Controller 2s? So Jeremy, hopefully I answered that one with the previous one. The only way you could do that is if you had a large electrical panel with a split bus, then you would have 2 independent systems. Next question from David. Issue with many solar and storage systems only being backup. Can Enphase Energy System operate standalone as an off-grid system? Full energy independence is a misnomer. So yeah, our systems have to be, the utility grid has to be present to commission our systems. Now, if the utility grid fails, the system can operate separated from the grid indefinitely as long as the sun keeps coming up and recharging the batteries. But it is not an off-grid system, no. Okay, challenge, more of a comment than a question. I would challenge the comment that 2 Encharge 10s are sufficient for a whole home backup. I would recommend 3 or 4 for a whole home. Well, it's a valid point, Jeremy. It really depends on the home's energy consumption. That's why we do encourage people to use the actual energy consumption of the home and our IQ system, our system planner, system estimator, to really try to accurately size the appropriate system based on the home's actual electrical consumption. Next question, is there a time limitation for the addition of extra batteries from original installation date, or can batteries be added at any point during the 10-year warranty period? James, to my knowledge, there would be no limitation in terms of adding extra batteries. Our products are evolving over time, so I suppose it's possible many years down the road that the batteries that we're selling may not be compatible with the first generation of our system controllers, but I really don't know that at this point. We want our systems to be modular and to be expandable. So, the intention of all of our product designs is to allow you to be able to add on batteries in the future to an existing system. Okay, next question from Michael. What if your client has existing APS systems, microinverters, and wishes to expand their solar with the IQ8? If the grid goes down, will the new IQ8 allow the APS systems, microinverters to participate in the microgrid? Michael, I'm almost certain that would kind of fall into the same category of only microinverters from one family being able to operate in a microgrid. I've never been asked that question before, but I'm almost certain that only the IQ8s could be installed in the microgrid. I don't see how the APS systems would function within this kind of Enphase ecosystem. I will check with our engineers, and if I do get a different answer, I will definitely respond to you. Next question is from Anton along the same lines, AC coupling to non-Enphase inverters. So currently, our battery system is only compatible with Enphase inverters, the models that I mentioned earlier. It can't be coupled with any other non-Enphase inverters today. Next question is kind of a statement: Ethernet communication between Envoy battery and NPower. So it's no, we don't have Ethernet communication between them. The communication between these components is done through the wireless communication kit that's inside the IQ combiner. Next question from Danny: is there an enclosure for 2 Encharge 3.3s or a 6 points? Oh, I see what you mean. So a slightly smaller cover if you're installing only 2 Encharge 3s as opposed to 3. So no, we only have the 2 cover sizes, the single Encharge 3 cover or the Encharge 10, which would be 3 of the Encharge 3s. What's the ETA on UL9540A listing approval on 3T and 10T? Great question, Jeremy. My understanding is that the 3T, so the smaller battery, does have UL9540A approval. It's only the 10T that doesn't have it yet. I don't have a timeline offhand right now, but I will try to look that up and get back to you with a response. So next question: how far back does the IQ system controller go with previous microinverter models? So in terms of compatibility with our battery system with the IQ controller 2, the oldest model that can be installed is the M215. The M250 would be slightly newer than that. And then we've got the IQ6 and IQ7. So yeah, M215, you are correct. That's the oldest model that can be connected to our IQ system controller 2, or the original controller. Question from Ed: where is there technical information on use with a gas generator? So that's in our tech brief on generators. I'm just going to kind of pause for a moment and look up that tech brief and just put that in the shared files here. So all of you that are interested in learning more about the generator integration can just look at that. All right, just bear with me. I'm fighting with 500 windows open on my screen at the same time. Okay, so the Enphase generator support tech brief is now in the handouts. So please, those of you that are interested, please go ahead and look for it there and see if you're able to download that file. Okay, let me go back to our questions list here. Okay, how does the load maximum change if you have a generator connected to a sunlight backup system? Well, in that case, you would have whatever the capacity of the generator is. However, that is going to be limited by the breaker that's in the IQ System Controller 2. So, for example, if you have the IQ System Controller 2 can accommodate an 80 amp breaker for the generator, so that'd be 64 amps of continuous current. Or if it's the original IQ System Controller, it can use a 60 amp breaker for the generator. So that went from 60 up to 80 amps with the new IQ System Controller 2. In terms of your maximum load, you would have the available power from the solar array plus the power of the batteries combined plus the generator itself. Another question from Anton about communication components. He's asking about Bluetooth range extenders. I don't believe that we have anything like that. I will try to look into that, and if I do get some information about range extenders, I think what you're talking about is probably for the communications kit, since Bluetooth isn't normally used with normal system operation. But yeah, I believe there is an extender kit that is in development, so I'll try to get some information on that for you. Okay, another question about compatibility of IQ8s and IQ7s. So it's worded: can you elaborate on the microgrid compatibility potential between IQ8 and IQ7 on the microgrid, on one microgrid? Just want to understand better the ability to use an existing IQ7 with the new IQ8 off-grid features. So Gwen, within one microgrid, only the IQ8s or IQ7 and IQ6 can be installed. They can't be intermingled in the same microgrid. So if you have a customer that has an IQ7 system and they want sunlight backup, meaning no batteries, they just want sunlight backup, then they would have to replace their IQ7s with IQ8s. Now, if they are willing to consider a battery, then they should just leave the IQ7s where they are and add more IQ7s to expand the system and couple that with a battery system. I'm not a proponent of replacing IQ7s with IQ8s necessarily, because the IQ7s work great with our batteries. Next question. I have a client that was told his IQ7A system could shed excess solar with an Envoy firmware upgrade. By that you mean if it's over the 1.5 to 1 ratio. This is apparently not correct. What options do they have to get this system operational? Okay, Dean, you're probably talking about solar circuit control or PV shedding. I don't know about the Envoy firmware upgrade necessarily, but this is a feature that has been available for quite some time. And we do recommend that all the components have up-to-date firmware. But essentially what you would do is figure out what how much of that solar needs to be disconnected in order to maintain that 1.5 to 1 ratio of solar AC power to battery AC power, and then put that solar on circuits that can be controlled with the load controller or load control setup. I've got a tech brief which goes into this in depth, which I can email to you. I'll do that before the end of the day today. Okay. Question, is the IQ7 being eliminated from production? No. The IQ7 is not being eliminated or sunsetted. In time it will be, but that is not something that has been mentioned within Enphase. It is not, there are no immediate plans to sunset the IQ7. It's going to be available for the foreseeable future. For sunlight only backup, can the user change the turn on time from 9 a.m.? Can this be changed to an available VA rather than time? So Michael, that is a great question. Our engineers are working on a number of different solutions and testing them out. For the initial release, it is going to be fixed at 9 to 4. You might be able to narrow the window, but you won't be able to expand it outside that 9 to 4 range. Definitely stay tuned. This feature and the way that the feature works and the settings available is going to evolve in time as we get more feedback from our customers and figure out ways to improve their experience. Wow, great questions. I know we're quite a bit over time here, but I think it was worth taking this time to answer all these questions. I'm really doing my best here, you folks. Thanks for your patience with me. Okay, I'll try to get through the last 5 or 10 here fairly quickly. So once the generator update comes, will there be a maximum size for the generator? So the maximum breaker is 80 amps with a system controller too, so that's 64 amps of current. You can install a larger generator that was by itself capable of more than 64 amps, but it's going to be limited to 64 amps by the Enphase system. Okay, that's pretty important to understand. Question, so the generator can now kick in the event of need for higher load startup. So yeah, the generator, if the generator is operating, then naturally you could start up larger loads than you could with only solar and battery. Next question, if you have existing M250 with IQ8 system with battery and generator, do you need to load shed the M250s? So again, let me just reiterate one of the earlier points. It's really important to understand that the M250s can't be installed in the same microgrid with IQ8s. If you have a customer with M250s and they want to add IQ weights, so they want to have a sunlight backup configuration, they would have to replace the M250s with IQ weights. If that's you're also asking about a generator. So if they want microinverters to be able to operate with the generator, then they would have to upgrade them from the M250s. If the IQ8s are not part of the equation, if you're just installing a generator and batteries with M250s on the solar array, then you would have to use load shedding to turn off all of the M250s when the generator is operating. Okay, question about installation. Do IQ8s use the same drop cables? Yes, they do. So the IQ8s use the same exact cable system as the IQ7s and 6s. Question from Tim, can I share a link to the sales and presentation resources again? So please take a look at the handout section of GoToWebinar. Click the little triangle next to where it says handouts, and you should see 3 PDFs in there. You've got this today's presentation, generator support tech brief, and IQ use cases, with a detailed parts list for different configurations. Question from Kayla, instead of printing out data sheets for all the components, is there a brochure with a high-level picture showing all the components for sales meetings? Kayla, I think your best bet is to look at the IQ use cases tech brief that's in the handouts. The last page of that tech brief has a long, the entire list of all the components that would be needed for the 4 different configurations. Okay, next question from Tim. What's the maximum load panel breaker size? The maximum would be 200 amps. So if you're doing a whole home backup, for example, and want to back up all the loads in a 200 amp panel, then you can put all those loads into that 200 amp panel with a 200 amp disconnect for the loads. Is there any future development on the roadmap to be able to hardware Cat5 cable between Envoy and IQ system controller? Jeremy, again, I'm not sure exactly what's happening in terms of kind of that topic, so I'll try to get some additional information for you and get back to you individually. The generator power balance explanation was misleading. There has to be a way to optimize solar and reduce generator output for it to work well. A speed regulation or drop system is used in the power grid might work, but would not be sufficient. Interesting point, Ed. I freely admit I'm not an expert necessarily or an electrical engineer. Was not trying to mislead anybody. Please take a look at the tech brief. It goes into great detail about generator integration and support. So hopefully your question will be answered there. If you read through that and you still have questions, feel free to send those to me and I'll get an answer from a generator expert at Enphase. Okay, question from Daniel. How would I expand an M250 system and include batteries? So Daniel, the essential thing that you would need to do is probably replace the Envoy. So you could just get a standalone Envoy, or you could install the IQ Combiner 3 or 4, and that would have. Sorry, let me step back a second. The combiners are not going to have the right Envoy model. So there's a specific Envoy model that you would have to install with the M250s. It's called the Envoy S-metered, S-metered. It should be available from RENVU, and if not, it could be purchased from the Enphase store. It allows for consumption metering, which is critical for battery system performance. So basically, you would have to, replace the Envoy with the Envoy S-metered. You would have to upgrade the firmware on the microinverters and then install the battery system. Okay, next question, another question from Jeremy about communication. Can you comment on if we'll be able to use a Verizon COM kit in the near future? So just to be clear, I think you're talking about the cell modem. A Verizon cell modem will be available going forward. The COM kit is what we call the communications kit, which is a wireless communication between the Enphase components. Yeah, Jeremy, I thought that the Verizon modem was available already, but I could be mistaken about that. Let me get some answers for you and get back to you, okay? All right, well, that was the last question that came in. We were quite a bit over time, but it was, I think, well worthwhile. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around for this session. I hope it was valuable for you. Peyton or Erez, I don't know if you wanted to have any closing comments today.
No, thank you very much, Tony. It was great. Really enjoyed the webinar.
Good, you're welcome.
Thanks everybody to join us.
Yeah, my pleasure.